everyone, this is Yami, your Latina next door. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have 4 DIYs for this Christmas season. Today's video is in partnership with Cricut, and I am going to be using the Cricut Maker and some Cricut products that I have never used before to create some Christmas DIYs. Let's get started. Alright, so for this very first DIY, I am using some of Cricut's new infusible ink. I have never used this before and I was so excited to try it. Now this package came with 2 pieces. One is a pattern piece and the other one is a solid color, and for this one I am going to be using the solid green color. Now it looks a little bit lighter, but when you transfer it on to one of these surfaces like this Cricut cushion that is made especially for this, you actually get a much darker tone and color. Now as you see here, what I did was I took a pattern of Christmas trees that I found online and I created my own design. I made 3 trees and I cut it out on my Cricut Maker. Now I did notice that with this you want to actually have less pressure when you cut this infusible ink transfer. Now what's so cool about this infusible ink is that it's not like a regular vinyl transfer where it lays on top of the fabric. This actually infuses right into the fibers, and you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Now for this, I'm also going to be using my Cricut Easy Press 2, and I'm setting it at 385 degrees and 40 seconds. I put my cushion cover on a table and I protected it to make sure no heat got through, and I inserted a large piece of cardstock inside of the pillowcase so that none of the ink would seep through. Now I placed my design in the desired location and then I pressed down because that clear vinyl that you see there is actually very tacky and sticks right on to the fabric. And then I used the heat press to set it. Once the time was up, I removed the Easy Press, and then I actually had a piece of parchment paper in between just to protect the fabric, and then I let it cool and peeled off the clear transfer tape. However, I wasn't done. I've seen those beautiful farm fresh Christmas tree pillows online and I was determined to make my own, so that's what I did. I went ahead and used black infusible ink and printed it out. Again, I laid out where I wanted my words to go, and then I also always have my fabric measuring tape, and I like to make sure that everything is nice and centered before I actually adhere it on and am ready to press it down. Now once everything was cooled down, I added a cushion and it was ready to go. I love how the ink is actually in the fabric and not laying on it. And this little chair is actually at the entrance of my home, and I thought it was just the perfect place for it. Now this video is also part of a playlist where Shannon over at the Cozy Christmas Cottage put together some amazing YouTubers to bring you even more Christmas inspiration. And I am so excited to see what these crafters have up their sleeves and what they're sharing for this holiday season. The link to that playlist will be in my description box below. Now, if you're visiting from the playlist, welcome. I would love for you to stick around by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that you don't miss a video. Now, if you wish to recreate any of these items that you see in this video, please remember all of the links will be in my description box below. Now for this next DIY, I'm going to need a large board because I'm going to be doing a sign similar in size to the one that I made for fall. So taking the measurements from that previous sign and cutting a piece of thin board and then using furring strips to make the frame. I sanded them and stained them and then adhered them on to that board. And I did spray paint that board with primer prior to painting it completely white with my favorite white chalk paint in White Adirondack. So for this piece, I wanted to add some ticking stripes, and I used some painter's tape to protect the frame. I measured 1 inch from the frame and I moved up along the frame, making small markings on the 1 inch mark. And then I used those little markings as a guide to adhere my washi tape. Now once that line was nice and straight, I used that line as a guide for my second line. And I did the same thing on the other side. Now I wanted to use this sign any year, no matter what kind of color scheme I would be using for Christmas. So I decided to go with a neutral palette, and I used the color French linen in order to make my ticking stripes. Now I gave each stripe 2 coats. I quickly removed the tape, and then once those lines were dry, I did the same thing to the horizontal sides. Alright, so for the second and third stripe, what you're going to do is once those 4 lines are dry, you're going to go back in and you're going to put washi tape right next to that very first line. And then you're going to measure out 1 inch all the way down and use those markings for your second larger line. And then I use washi tape for the second thinner line. And I didn't measure the first one, so I basically just used the first stripe as a guide to see how thick my second one was going to be. Now for the thinner stripe, again, I did 2 coats, but for the thicker middle stripe, I only did 1 coat of paint because when they intersected, I want to see the different lines intersecting, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. Once you're done painting, you're going to remove the washi tape, wait till it dries, and then do the perpendicular ones. And as you can see right here, you can kind of see where they intersect because they're lighter in tone. So it kind of looks like a plaid pattern. So you all know I love vinyl decals, so I decided to create a large decal of Matthew 1:21 because after all, Christ is the reason for the season. So I thought this would be really special to have on my wall. Again, you see me pull out my fabric tape measure. I can't live without that thing. I always have it around my neck, and it comes in handy when you're trying to center things like this. Now this isn't as festive of a sign because it doesn't kind of have all those Christmas things that you would expect, like Christmas trees. So I wanted to show you guys how you can add a little bit of Christmas flair to any sign that you have in your home, especially ones that are neutral like this. So I went to my crafting stash and I got some of those single picks that you can get at Dollar Tree. And what I decided to do was make little mini wreaths out of them. And what I did was I just hot glue and twist the ends together until they did not come apart. And then I used that little form along with some bushes from Dollar Tree and even Walmart. And I pulled apart the bushes and added those little pieces onto those wreaths. Now, in order for these to look really great as miniature wreaths, you want to make sure that the bushes that you use have really small leaves. And I used a couple of different ones that were a little bit darker and greener, and others that had a little bit of that lamb's ear kind of texture. And you all will be proud. I have 3 finger protectors now. I am starting to find them. I also used some of this frosted white bush, also from Dollar Tree, and I took it apart like you see and added little pieces throughout each wreath. And then finally, I used some of these rose gold berries from Dollar Tree, and I cut them up in little bunches and adhered them on to the wreaths. I then used some of the same ribbon that I have been using for my DIY ornaments, and I took some packing tape and adhered them at different lengths from the back of the frame. This way, if I ever want to use the frame without it being a Christmassy theme, I can always do so by removing them. But I think they gave them just the right touch. So for this third DIY, I'm going to be using these little wooden tags made from plaid, and you can find these at your local craft stores. I got some of my Rust-Oleum chalked age glaze, and I gave them a nice coat. I let them dry overnight, and then I created stencils. Now this was my first time actually creating stencils because I usually do decals, but this actually gives you the opportunity to use any kind of color you want for your words, and they're just as easy to make. I simply adhered the stencil on, and then I painted them with my favorite chalk paint, white Adirondack, because I wanted to keep these neutral so I can always use them every year, again and again. Now this stencil vinyl adheres very well, and once you're done painting them, you just simply remove them and let them dry. I used some jute string and hung them on my stockings. Now for this last DIY, I am using some of Cricut's metallic leather. I'm really excited because I've only really cut paper or vinyl with my Cricut Maker, and this was something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I want to make napkin rings out of leather, and I decided that I would create my own design. So I simply used the Shapes tool in Cricut's design space, and I wanted something that kind of looked like a leather clasp. So I knew I wanted rounded edges, and I used both the rectangle and the circle shapes, and then I welded them together and then measured them down to the size that I wanted them. And then of course I duplicated it because I needed several. Now, in order to cut this thicker material, you will need a deep cut blade. Now I wanted this to look like it had like a little clasp, so I took some of these little thumbtacks that I had on hand, and what I did was I cut the little tack part in half using some pliers, and it's because I didn't want it to go through the leather because it was actually longer than both leather pieces combined, and I didn't want it to go past the second piece because I didn't want it to end up damaging any napkins that I would put this on. So I cut it just enough for it to go to the first one and then just pierce the second one. And so what I did was I would use one little thumbtack to find the location of where I wanted the hole to go, and then I actually used my weeding tool from Cricut because it was so pointy, it worked so well, and I made the holes for the little tack. Alright, so once my holes were set, I took some E6000 or Gorilla Glue and I added it to the little end piece of the thumbtack, and then I pierced it through the top leather piece. And then I would add some more of the Gorilla Glue on the inside where both leather ends would connect. And then I would press it against each other, making sure that the tack went through that little second hole, but not enough to go actually through it completely. And then I took a little clasp like this from Dollar Tree, and then I held them together with it while it dried. And then I repeated it for all of the other napkin rings. I absolutely love how these turned out. They came out exactly as I had envisioned them. These are perfect for those wonderful family get-togethers that we will be having this holiday season. I'm so excited to be able to share these different ideas that will allow you to deck the halls this Christmas season with beautiful and unique DIYs. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've made it this far, let me know in the comments below which one of these DIYs was your favorite. Thank you so much to Cricut for sponsoring this video so I can bring you guys even more inspiration for this holiday season. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this video. Again, don't forget to subscribe so that you can become a part of the familia. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I'm gonna go ahead and put some on the screen. That way you all can go ahead and check out even more inspiration. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Until then, adios.